Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the High Performance Health Podcast with myself, Kyle, Andrew, and Chris. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. It's not very often that we end up having a lot of leftovers from each kind of podcast topic that we're talking about, but obviously last week we dived into the principles of fitness where we covered overload, we covered reversibility and recovery. Today we're going to be looking at specificity, progression, adaptation, and potentially we might discuss a little bit of mobility as well. But Kyle, start me off. I'm going to pick on you today. Discuss to talk to me about the definition of sort of specificity and why that is super important in making sure you're tailoring a training program for somebody's specific goals.
Specificity for me would be trying to relate the training you're doing into either your real world or other sports related goals. So obviously, if you're someone more endurance based or doing marathons or doing triathlons, your training needs to be geared around that. If you're a strong man or a power man, you need to be doing low rep power work. So to be honest, most people who come into this program don't need a huge amount of specificity. They need to master the basics, get their CV up, get their body weight down, do a little bit of mobility. Specificity is something that you earn. So once you get to a certain baseline of athletic performance and ability, then you can get more specific. But I would try and get that base in before you go off in one direction too much.
And when you talk about the basics, I have an idea in my mind what you mean, but talk to me about the basics. What should people specifically be focusing on, let's say at the very beginning of that training program or any training program?
So when I get a client on an onboarding call, I take them through some movement patterns. So I was taught 20 years ago on old bodybuilding forums before social media and all of this stuff to train in horizontal push and pull, vertical push and pull, quad dominant and ham dominant. And if you hit, that's basically your chest, shoulders, two for back, one for quads, one for hamstrings. If you hit those main movement patterns in any workout, you really can't go too far wrong because, in my experience, something people do is they unbalance themselves. Everybody wants to hit chest and arms and do abs, and then when leg day comes, they're too busy. Yes. So you need to be able to master those basic compound movements. You're pushing, you're pulling, you're hinging, you're squatting, you're lunging, your rotation. And then whenever you do that and you have a good base, then the world's your oyster.
People essentially want to look like an imaginary carpet fitter, so they want to walk around like this the entire time, as if they've got two rolls of carpet under their arms. How can a general workout plan still be effective though without specificity, Chris?
Yeah, if you're going from absolutely zero to like just a general workout, a general plan will get you through maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then you're going to have to start looking at specificity. I find it very hard to say that word. I
Same.
can't be the only one. Um, then you're going to have to get into the nitty gritty. Like, hey, I'm going to have a powerlifting competition, or I'm going to go on holidays. I want to have a little bit more definition in the abs. So you're going to have to sort of start looking at your diet a bit more. If you're going to any sort of fitness competition, high rocks, powerlifting, anything like that, you're going to have to really hammer, like make sure your legs are really resilient. Your lungs, your heart are trained, so you want to get into your zone two, building your engine, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but just starting out, you can get a lot from squat, bench, shoulder press, and deadlift for 5 to 6 weeks. Nice hypertrophy rep range, 8 to 12, and yeah, you'll get a lot of that. As we touched on last week, those noob gains, that's a real thing. They'll get you really, really, really far without having to get down into the nitty gritty.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I remember saying that in that first 12 months of any training program, if you're an untrained person, you are literally going to be able to look at a dumbbell and just blow up like Popeye. And that's wonderful. You know, you're never going to get those, I hate to use the word gains year upon year after that at the same kind of level, but you are going to make some serious progress. I think I think as well, when I think about specificity, I also think about structure. And that was one thing that I would always notice in a gym with a lot of just looking around at what are the members doing. I'm sure you guys who've worked in gyms would find this as well. You could walk into that gym that you worked in 5 years ago and see the same people doing the same thing over and over again, wondering why they aren't getting any better. Or people that sit down, I'm doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Why? Because that person over there is doing it and they look in really good shape. And I think that's one of the most successful factors I find on our program is, having that structure in place as well. The training program has been designed specifically for you, providing you with that structure and making sure we're going to touch base on it in a little while, kind of progression, but making sure that you're just continuously trying to progress moving forwards, whether that be set reps, whether that be time under tension, volume of some kind. So I think specificity is super important, but also making sure that we're kind of structuring the training session with a vision of where does this look like in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. What talk to me, Andrew, about sort of nutrition specifics as well. When we're talking about sort of nutrition be specific to somebody's training goal as well, how would you kind of sort of steer that conversation with clients?
I mean, it depends on the goal. Like most people coming in, I don't think need to overcomplicate it. I actually think there could probably be a very distinct lack of specificity in the earlier stages. I mean, for looking at the vast majority of people that we come into or that come into work with us, what are they trying to achieve? Again, everything's going to be on like a bell curve. There's going to be people at the extremes, but we're talking to the majority at the start. They're looking to get fitter, stronger, healthier, lose some body weight, be around a long time. To me, that requires a focus on a few levers: calories, protein, fiber, micronutrients. Don't eat too much, get enough protein, get an adequate amount of fiber, and start getting some micronutrients into your diet. Just be consistent with those. So I actually think a far more generalized approach at the start is usually better. Now, if you have made some significant progress, you're to a point where you're happy and you decide, I want to do a half marathon. I want to do X, want to go and do a 5 day hike in the mountains in North Carolina, whatever it is. Those are distinctly different goals. So again, it depends really on what the person is looking to achieve. I would put myself in the category of a generalist at the moment. I don't have anything highly specific that I'm working towards, but those three things are still very true. I just want to be fitter, stronger, healthier, and be around a long time. I'm still focusing on calories, I'm still focusing on protein, I'm getting enough fiber, and I'm getting enough micronutrients in. Again, even looking at, let's say, a body composition goal versus an endurance goal, you're still going to have to consider those elements. But maybe for the endurance side, you focus a bit more on fueling, more carbohydrates, bit more timing around sessions is probably important. If your goal is just body composition, honestly, I don't think you need to overcomplicate it. Can you get marginal percentages by maybe timing of nutrients or things like that? I think that's honestly going to be more related to performance in the sessions and sleep quality than anything else, as opposed to there's something being magic about specific nutrients at specific times. Again, it's more about the individual at that point. It's like, well, do you sleep better if you eat 3 hours out or 4 hours out from bed? The further I sleep out from bed, the better I sleep. So if I can eat 4 hours out of bed and get through it, then I typically do. That's specific to me in almost any context. So again, I think it really depends on what the goal of the person is. And then you can start to have the conversation because it can be a really broad spectrum, but I think the base points are always going to be there. You're going to need adequate calories for your goal. If it's fat loss, it's a certain number. If it's endurance, it's probably going to need to be a certain amount. If it's strength, it's probably still going to need to be a certain target. You're still going to need adequate protein regardless. Good amount of fiber for overall health and digestion and getting some form of micronutrients through your diet as well. So I think it's easier, in my opinion, to focus on those general fundamentals, and then you can branch out to that once you have consistency with the more generic advice or the more general guidelines, let's say.
I know obviously the topic we're covering right now is kind of specificity, but from somebody coming in, Carl, to the program, we're talking about nutrition. What kind of sort of macronutrient split would you have somebody on just looking when let's talk about John Smith that comes in, he's 225 pounds. He hasn't walked into a weight room for years. He hasn't done any cardiovascular exercise, but his main goal is weight loss. What kind of sort of split? So you can kind of have a relatively general idea, but also we can make that specific to the individual. How would you kind of split up that macronutrients from proteins, carbs, and fats?
So I really like what Andrew said. And to be honest, I think probably the majority of the people on this program should never go past that, because obviously meal timing is different. But if you're trying to get specific with your protein and your carb and your fat ratios, the neuroticism that comes with focusing on that is almost more detrimental than whatever slight performance gain you would get. So in that thought, someone who comes into the program and they're brand new to this, I don't like to get them too specific. Obviously, everybody's protein's too low. So I give them a calorie target and a protein target. And I say, don't worry about your carbs and your fat balance to begin. Start tracking, get a bit of self-awareness and that feedback loop in place. And then before I begin to address their macronutrients, I address the quality of their diet. So I take out the processed food, I take out anything that might disrupt their gut, and I try and get some more micronutrients in there, some more fruit, some more fiber, some more vegetables. And that process itself can take, it can take weeks or it can take months. And then if we do eventually get there, then you can start to play with maybe carb cycling or carbohydrate timing or doing some lower calorie days to help boost the fat loss and I do like a cyclical approach with that stuff, but you've got to master the basics before you get there.
I think as well on something like that, I agree with you, Kyle, in that I like a calorie target and a protein target high level. I think the individual finds the carbs and fats over time. Like if you get better,
Yeah.
I am very, very high carb individual in comparison to fat macros. You see people talk about carnivore or keto. I could not do one of those approaches. It just would not work well for me. But I feel fantastic when I'm eating a bunch of white rice, when I'm having a bagel pre-workout, when I'm having some popcorn at night, whatever the source is, when I'm having some sweet potato. I love making diced potatoes and throwing some Cajun seasoning on them and throwing them in the air fryer. That's like one of my favorite things. um, but I perform and feel significantly better on a higher carbohydrate approach than I do in a higher fat approach. When I have high fat, I feel lethargic. I feel, like my digestion's taking forever. If I eat a bunch of fats in comparison to a bunch of carbs, I just do not feel as good. And I think as you become more advanced and as you become more consistent, you'll start to get more in tune with that. As kind of mentioned, pulling out processed foods, you reduce a lot of the garbage, some of the inflammation comes out. You start to then notice when you introduce a certain food, like, wow, I ate a pizza last night and I feel like normal before. You just didn't realize how bad you felt day to day. So I think I agree with your stance here, Kelly, on the macro split. And I think honestly, if you stick with it long enough and you find a way to be consistent, you start to kind of feel, the
Yeah,
differences on you. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I couldn't
definitely.
agree more with you guys. I just want to kind of sort of take that to Chris, you talked about protein targets and calorie targets, and I couldn't agree with you more. The last thing I want to do is blow somebody's mind by saying you've got to do all of these things. Oh, by the way, and I want you to obsessively track your calories, because I think that can also lead down a path of sort of slight disordered eating as well. And the one
Yeah.
thing that I notice from my clients checking their calorie trackers on a daily basis is a significant lack of, you touched on it there, Carl, protein, which I kind of want to dive into with you, Chris, but also just basic fruits and vegetables to a
Yeah.
point where I almost think fiber should be its own macronutrient sort of target on a daily basis as well. People aren't getting anywhere near that 20 to 30 grams of dietary fiber they should be taking on a daily basis. They're just not. It's protein bars, protein shakes, coffee with creamer. I'm seeing, oh, a hamburger from Burger King at lunchtime, and then like a steak burrito and 2 pints of beer in the evening. And that's what I'm seeing. So let's simplify it. Let's go, just track your calories. It might not be the best diet in the world right now, but if we can get you within a deficit, it's going to come down. We need to unpick 30 years of bad habits, and let's not obsess about what it looks like, but let's just get you into that deficit. But before I carry on rambling on, Chris, talk to me about sort of protein targets and why specifically are people under hitting their protein targets on a daily basis? And more importantly, what are the main benefits on this program for taking protein?
So protein are the building blocks of muscle building, and I mean most people who come in this program, they will be looking for a body recomposition. They will be building muscle mass, and that kind of shocks people sometimes when you meet them first. But we are not talking about The Rock. We are not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're not talking about getting absolutely massively huge. We're just talking about building more muscle than you have now. Um, People are often shocked as well at how hard it is to hit a protein target, because they massively kind of overshoot before they get the guidance they need. Oh yeah, I eat some eggs and I have like maybe a piece of chicken for dinner. Yeah, I eat lots of protein. Yeah, that's protein. Um, and that's like about, I don't know, 40, 50 grams over the day. And my 2-year-old son might eat a bit more than that, I think. So an
I've
adult
never
might
I've
need
never met anyone who accidentally hits the correct or optimal protein goal.
yeah, and pe people worry as well. They're like, "Oh, what if I go over?" I'm like, Don't worry, you won't go
Go
over
over,
protein
go over.
target."
I actually find in a fat loss phase I respond very well to significantly higher protein targets.
Yeah.
I'll go as high as 1.5 grams per pound of weight.
Yeah.
Well,
Not just even lean mass. Like I'll do 1.5 grams per pound of body weight in a real dedicated fat loss phase, and I respond very well.
Yeah,
how
yeah.
You can't stay on that for an enormous amount of time though.
how much is that? So how many grams is that,
I mean,
Andrew?
I'm only 160 pounds though. So so it's only like 230 or something for me, was 50% at 240. Um, which isn't crazy. Like four
Yeah,
meals at 55 grams is actually pretty doable.
I think for me, my daily basis is 3 boiled eggs and a scoop of protein, a tuna fish wrap at lunchtime, piece of chicken, which gets you about 50 grams of protein just in a chicken breast at dinner time, and then Greek yogurt with the protein powder in it. And I see so many people pushing the Ninja Creamy as well.
The Ninja
In
Creamy is
terms
great. I got one last year. Fantastic. What an investment. I am a chocolate guy, so that was the perfect investment for me. Well, actually, it was a present. Sorry, it wasn't even an investment.
then you've got was Kyle hitting what 2 pounds of Greek yogurt on a daily basis as
Dude,
well.
I can do 2 pounds of chicken and 2 pounds of Greek yogurt with no hassle at all, to be honest.
Yeah. So basically, everyone that's listening to this, protein targets, I always err on the sort of on the low end of what Andrew mentioned there, 0.5 to zero point 0.8 grams to not kind of blow somebody's mind. It's
Yeah.
very easy to hit 100 grams of protein. Let's say the average member on this program might be 200 pounds. We can all get 100 grams of protein in. You're knocking it out in 2 meals, pretty much before lunchtime. Um,
I think some of it's a skill as well. Like you get better at it over time.
you just have to really enjoy chicken, eggs, and Greek yogurt.
You do
You
get
have
more
your own
used
way.
to it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
you
people find
definitely
it
do.
awful at the start, but like now, I've been force feeding myself for 20 years. I can eat anything.
Yeah.
Moving
Except
on.
traditional Irish food, possibly.
Oh, potatoes. So moving sort of the moving along. Let's talk about progression. So, the definition of progression, gradually increasing sort of the challenge to continue improving. How can somebody know, Chris, when it's time to move on to progress in their training when they're getting, yeah, I'm not going to say anymore.
So, like progression can, like it's not going to be linear. And there's a great quote, like it's kind of a bridge of like from where you are, where you want to be. And then when you get to that point of where you want to be, that could be 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And clients will often come to me as well when they're at the end of their 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They won't realize that it's coming. But I might mention to them on a call, like, hey, your program's going to change in 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, thank God. It was like I was on autopilot and it just wasn't feeling the same. And about, so even the layman or somebody who hasn't been training that long, you will feel like, okay, this is becoming like a comfortable old pair of slippers now. We want it to be like military boots. So um after about 6 or 8 weeks on any given program, it's going to be time to move on. And you'll just be able to tell by your fatigue, your muscle soreness, if you've hit the rep range and you're just like there's nowhere else for you to go. If you're doing like 5 by 5 and you're benching like 300 pounds, like for reps of five, like okay, it's probably time to change things up.
Yeah. What do you think, Carlos, sign kind of some of the signs, let's say that a client, I think everybody tries to progress too quickly on this
Mhm.
program as well and tries to move mountains within 6 weeks. I've literally had calls with people 6 weeks into this program going, I would have expected to notice more change by now. But what are kind of some of the signs do you think that a client has progressed too quickly? They're trying to move the arrow further down the line. They're kicking the can further down the line.
So to be honest, I find the exact opposite problem. But if they're moving too quickly, you would see too much disparity in the reps they were doing. So like maybe you prescribe 3 sets of 10 and they've got a set of 7, a set of 5, and then they drop the weight by 20 pounds and finally get their set of 10. Not unfortunately, that's not as common as maybe you would like to see. It's the opposite where they'll do 3 sets of 10, 35 week by week by week. And some people say they just can't bridge that gap between the dumbbells. So I say get a bit more creative with your rep ranges. If you can do 3 by 10, then try to go to 3 by 12, jump the weight, do 3 by 6 or 8, and then build it up again that way so that you can, not everything has to be an increment up in a new dumbbell or a new weight. You can just sort of use the rep ranges to finesse your way in between.
I think for me, my one of my go-tos when you're looking at rep ranges, and you're like you mentioned there, 3 sets of 10. For me, it would be 4 sets of 8, which I believe
Mm-hmm.
is 32. So yeah, you can keep the weight the same. We can increase the overall lifting volume, although it might only be by 2 reps. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's important for people to understand. I don't need you to get me 5 or 6 more reps. If somebody comes to me, for example, and they say, I can't do 10 chin-ups. Okay, but could you do one? Yes. Great. Do you reckon you could do one 6 times? Probably. Okay, cool. Well, you can do 6 chin-ups then. And if we can build that up, so the rep ranges, I think that people are working, you don't necessarily need to be working through that 3 or 4 kind of set range, that ideology that people have. Probably one of the hardest exercises to execute, I think, in terms of progression when it comes to in being in the gym is a chin up. I would imagine most of you guys would agree with me there. So if all of a sudden you can go, well, I can do one, okay, maybe then 15 minutes later you come back and do another one, go and
Mm-hmm.
do something else, come back, do another one. It's not, it isn't the best way that I would train somebody, but it means increasing that volume of what they can lift throughout that training session. And to me, that would show signs of progress. Um, do you think, Andrew, is it more effective to progress weight, reps, sets, time under tension? How would you sort of steer your clients down in terms of progression?
I would steer away from time under tension because it's just simply harder to track. Personally, again, maybe more advanced individuals can track something like that. Um, by default, by increasing the reps you're doing, you will increase time under tension. So I would rather go up the funnel, so to speak, and start at the top. Why try to track a metric down here when you can track a simple metric up here that's actually going to increase it by default anyway? If you go from doing 10 reps to 12 reps at the same tempo, you have increased time under tension. Um, I personally would just focus on reps and weight. Honestly, I mean, that's all I have ever done. And again, I can only speak to my own transformation on this. I've helped plenty of people like you guys as well, but um, hasn't hindered me, and it hasn't hindered anyone that I've personally worked with. And I think those are the easiest to gamify as well. Like you have to think about, how do we make this as simple as possible for people? Because it's not your full-time job. It's not something you need to focus on for 4 hours a day. What are some simple metrics that we can gamify? And I think reps and weight tend to be the easiest. To me, I would progress to the top end of the rep range, as a 10 to 12 or 8 to 12, whatever here. If you hit 11, 8, and 7 on your reps, keep going until you're maxing those three out close to 12. And again, not every set needs to be to failure. So maybe you do leave one in the tank on that first set so you can push the second up to 11, 12. Then you know it's usually time to progress or add 5 pounds, 2 pounds, whatever you can. So personally, I'm a big advocate of pushing to the top of the rep range and then stepping the weight up once you've got the desired number of sets to the rep range. And again, there is no perfect numbers here. We might program 3 sets, we might program 4, we might program 5, we might program 2. It doesn't matter. The reason we have that is we are probably trying to hit a certain amount of volume on a specific body part. There's nothing specific about the set number that's going to make a difference in program as a whole, or your understanding of the training program as a whole. Same with the rep ranges. I mean, for hypertrophy, for muscle building, for body composition, you're looking at anything 5 through 30 being practical. I mean, I think they have studies showing that you can go above that, but at that point it just gets silly. Who wants to do 40 reps? I certainly don't. I have no desire to sit and do 40 reps. Give me a heavier weight and 5 through 15. That's kind of where I like to sit. But again, the goal isn't something magic about the reps. It's the fact that you're pushing close to or to failure in some instances, and you're increasing what you can do at that level. Like that's the whole point of progression to me. And the reason you see people in the gym year after year literally looking identical is they go and they lift the same 20-pound barbell and do the same target. And it's just not enough to move the needle. We're very good at adapting as human beings. That's why we're still on the face of the earth today. You have to give yourself some form of stimulus if you want to keep moving forward. And to me, the only way you can do that is by having a clear structure and a plan is step one, tracking that plan and progressing that plan. I think anything else is either, and I don't see it as anything else. I see it as either ineffective or inefficient. It's one of the two. Like I just progressing. So that's how important I think progress is. If you want to be inefficient or ineffective, don't worry about progression. But I don't think anyone's here to be inefficient or ineffective.
Which unfortunately is probably the majority of the people that aren't coached, who feel that they know what they're doing, who are just
Honestly,
stuck in
I,
that
I
state.
was thinking about this the other day, and I've been all over the world, luckily enough. From Australia to Tokyo to the US to Europe, like I have been a lot of places, and I was in a commercial gym here, so we had to get a commercial gym membership for this week because the hotel gym is so bad it's laughable. Um, and I walked in, and I'm like, 90% of the people in here just don't know what they're doing or don't look like they know what they're doing. And I'm trying not to judge. But I'm like, you could be so much more productive with your time. Like you're taking an hour out your day, you're probably putting in the effort. Like you've probably got a busy day, you've maybe got a family to look after. Get a fucking plan. Because if someone's given you that plan, well, they're the wrong coach, you can't solve for that. But I feel like so many people are so much worse off when they don't have something they're following. They're not being attentive about it. It's like if you're stepping away from your business and your family, why are you spending that hour inefficiently? Obviously, people listening aren't. But like
No
it's
one
just
is.
it has to be something that you have to do if you want to be anywhere close to effective.
The problem is there's a difference between training and exercise. And I think a
Yeah.
large majority of the population of the world who are using gyms are exercising. There's no structure, they're going in, and don't get me wrong, right? People will make progress in some way, shape, or form from the very beginning, right? However, without that structure, without that idea of progress, I like using the RPE scale as well in terms of, progress for me. How well am I recovering? If you start off, Chris mentioned at the beginning of week 1 and the end of week 6, the way I would look at it is if your RPE scale's gone down, you're recovering quicker, you're able to
Yeah.
lift more, it's getting easier. The kind of the again, we've only covered 2 topics. I'm really enjoying this principle of exercise podcast that we've done over the last couple of weeks. My final question, probably for today's podcast, would be to Kyle. You mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago on the High Performance Health Program, discussing like working to failure. I believe it was an Andrew Huberman
Mhm.
post. What is your thought about training to failure, and do you kind of promote that with your clients?
So I try and tell my clients it was something I call good form failure. So the point at where your perfect execution breaks down, the vast majority of the time is probably where you should stop, because you then begin involving other body parts, you begin stressing your central nervous system, and you don't get the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Basically, the added stress onto your body, coupled with all the workout you're doing, isn't worth the extra 1 or 2 reps. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be some times where you do go all out, maybe, 1 exercise a week. I would say you go to absolute failure. Everything else, the science shows that if you stay 1 rep short of true failure, you actually get better progress, because you don't need to go to your absolute extremes in this process. It's just about sort of staying at 80 to 90%, recovering well, staying healthy, staying happy and motivated, and then just, tracking or stacking week on week.
I fully agree, Kyle, and as you said, the research backs that up. The one caveat that I have for this is that I think most people stop well shy of failure. And I think it's good to occasionally test the boundaries to actually see where you land. Um, because again, when you have someone, there's research around this. The average gym goer stops something like 5 to 7 reps shy, and they think they're 1 to 2. So I fully agree with what you say. I also think it's good just to push yourself on a safe exercise, like a an isolation curl, a pull down, a chin up, or something like that. Something where if it goes wrong, there's no consequence. Because that actually gives you an indication of where you can push to. So I think that's an important caveat as well, just to throw it in there every so often to actually see where your limits are.
Yeah, do
I
agree.
like simple ones for me, like you mentioned there, Andrew, always be safe. Chest press machine. I absolutely love
Yeah,
that would be the kind of
perfect.
thing
100%.
on where you can have some fun with it. You can increase that time under tension. You can go through multiple drop sets, strip sets, whatever you want to work to absolute failure. Um, awesome. All right. I'm happy with that. If you guys, before I kind of finish, is there anybody that wants to add anything more to those 2 topics that we've covered today?
Just wanted to say to Andrew that I have done, for some reason in the past, the time under tension sets. So I didn't specify a rep range. I gave myself like 40 seconds and tried to beat it week on week. It is awful.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like my
You've
idea of fun.
you've no mental reference for where you are on the set apart from your training partner trying to count for you every now and again,
Yeah,
and it's torture.
you have to make the gym enjoyable, and that's not enjoyable for me. For
I'd
sure.
rather do that than eat two Greek yogurts, kind of.
2 pounds of Greek yogurt as well.
Honestly, boys,
Yeah.
like easy.
All right,
I'm
we will finish there today. I'm going to
Hey
give you
guys.
3 a break for next week. We've discussed specificity and progression. We've still got another couple to go, adaptation and mobility as well. So awesome, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining in. Everybody who's listening at home, hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you all next week. All right, take care,
Guys.
everyone. Have a great
Bye,
day.
guys.
Bye bye.
See you guys.